Hello and welcome to another tutorial, and this time I'm going to build a plugin for Final Cut Pro 10 called Inside Text Shadow. And what it does, it puts a drop shadow inside text, so it looks like somebody's cut something out of paper and a light is shining through. And that will be available in Final Cut Pro 10. It's a free plugin. You can download that straight away if you don't want to watch the tutorial, but a like, subscribe and ringing a bell would be great. Right, let's get on with it and go into motion. And we get the familiar screen. It's going to be a title and it's going to be 1080 at 29.97. A title because you've got access to the text controls. I keep saying this in the tutorials, a bit sound like a broken record. With a title, you get more access to the published text controls. Okay, open. And as always, I delete the text and I turn the background off. But leave them there because you never know when you're going to need them. Okay, we're going to go new group. And let's call that Foreground. Yep, okay. And then now what I'm going to do, I'm going to drop a color generator in there. Generators, color solid, put that in. It also sizes, but as this is going to be a plugin published to Final Cut, I'm actually going to publish this color. Publish. So now these are the parameters. So that's going to be foreground color. Yep. Put a capital on there. Okay, I'm going to leave it blue for the time being because it helps and you'll see why. But the next thing up, I need to do some text entry. So again, a new group. Let's call this text. And then I'm going to just tap some text in. Let's say text here. And I've got Arial black and regular. Yep, that should be about right, but it needs to be bigger and I also need to center it. So go properties, 0 and 0. And then back to the parameters, put center. And what I'm going to do is put a carriage return in between those. Yeah, make them a lot bigger. Why don't we go to those two edges? And then I need to adjust the line spacing to bring that up. Okay, that's fine. Okay, now I can't put the drop shadow inside the text because it's a solid object in here, and Motion will actually put the drop shadow on. I mean, if you look and we just enable this, on there, pump the opacity up and the distance. You can see the drop shadow is underneath, so that's not what we want. We want the drop shadow inside the letters. So we'll turn that off. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to knock this text out of the foreground. So that's not a problem, but to make life easier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that into a clone layer. So we've got a clone layer, and let's call this clone. Like that. And then go back to the foreground, and I'm going to add an image mask to that. Yeah, and then drop the clone layer into there. Now you can't see anything at the moment for two reasons. One, I've got the text turned on the front. I'm going to turn that off. That's getting there, but that's the wrong way round. So I need to go to the controls for the image mask and hit invert. And there we go. That's looking okay. So we've got the foreground. Now we want something behind it. So we go new group. And let's call this background or background. And we'll drop that underneath the foreground. This is only a 2D project in Motion. If it's 3D, then it doesn't really matter what order the layers are in some instances. But as this is 2D, it's looking from the top down. So putting the background underneath the foreground means literally that. And we're going to go and find another generator, color solid, in there, and we'll call this background color. Yep, and again we'll publish that. Publish, and so we've got background color. Sorry for the English spelling. Okay, that's good. Now, if I alter this, and let's say put it to white, we have the knockout. Okay, it doesn't look much at the moment, but just to double check, put another colour in. Yep, so this is the colour underneath. So it's not the colour of the text. The text is cutting the hole, and that's white. And so we're actually seeing through this blue, and we're seeing the colour underneath. Okay, so what we can do is make that white. And let's make the foreground colour white as well. And that should be completely white, that's correct. Now what I need to do is enable the drop shadow on the foreground. Okay, off to the inspector. Let's just get rid of that for the time being. And we won't hit four corner, we'll hit drop shadow. And there we can see, let's just turn the grid off. We can see the text coming out. So, and I can hit distance on there. And a bit of blur. And that gives you the idea that this background is behind, you know, it's like a paper cutout. To give it a bit more realism, if I go to the project and go to the background color, let's say if it's shining a light, it'd be slightly darker, so I can just knock that down. It really annoys me sometimes when these don't work. And that's got that A in it as well. Let's change that. Because I know my friend Chris will be really annoyed if I don't. Double click on there. And we can adjust that to give it a bit of depth. I mean, it's going to go slightly grey, isn't it? On there. And that's looking quite good. Time to hit save. I should have done it beforehand, really, shouldn't I? I'd have lost all my work. So save. Inside Text Shadow. And this is going to be an XEffects free because it's free. And it's going to be free. And we're going to publish that. Lovely. Now we've got the foreground and background colour on here, that's great, but we also want to publish the drop shadow controls. And those are on the foreground. As you can see here, we've got the drop shadow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to publish, first of all, this item up here, which will give you the toggle. And then just quickly go through and publish all the other items in there. I don't need fixed source, but you might want to adjust this because this, you know, if the light's coming from the bottom left, it was going to cast a shadow like that. But I'm going to leave it in the default like that and then hit save. And the project. So here we go. Got the foreground color, background color, and the drop shadow on and off, and all the other controls that go with it. And I'm going to hit save again. Let's quickly hop over to Final Cut Pro 10, and in XEffects Free you can find we've got the Inside Text Shadow, we've also got the clock face and the YouTube subscribe button, which we made recently on the tutorials. We'll drop the URL for those in the information below. You can check those out, they're free as well. Let's just drop this on the timeline. And that looks pretty good. And here in the inspector you can see foreground, background color. Always like to check stuff works. I mean, that looks pretty impressive. I actually quite like it, the dark with the drop shadow. And the background and the drop shadow works perfectly. Okay, fine. But we want to get a bit funkier than that. So let's go back to motion. Back in motion, you might say, why did you do the clone layer for dropping into the image mask? Well, because it's a clone layer of this, the text, but not the clone layer of the text, actually, the actual layer that's the text. It's the group that contains it, because it means I can duplicate this. Just as an example, you're probably not going to do this, but if I push that over there, you can see I've got two instances. If I just clone the text, I won't be able to add to it. Okay, which means we can do some other stuff as well. Now, the time base on here is 1 to 100. Okay, that's probably a bit long for what I want. So what I'm going to do is have a look at the project and possibly bring that down to, let's say if it's 30 in, 30 out, maybe that's 60. Let's make that 70. 70 frames. And you're probably ahead of me. I'm going to add build in and build out markers. What do build in and build out markers do? I can add a marker, edit the marker, and make that build-in optional. So when this appears in Final Cut Pro 10, I can either have this on or off. So if you put an animation in this section, you can either choose to see the animation, or by toggling it off, it'll go straight to this marker and won't take that build in. Likewise, I want to do the same on the way out. So I'm just going to keep that to 10 in the middle. I tend to keep the middle short because if you want to scrunch the effect down to quite something short, if you've got 5 seconds worth in the middle, it can get a bit funky with stuff. So I tend to, if it's an effect that doesn't have any animation in it, I just bring it down, say something like 10. So we need to do another one on here. So edit marker, I've done that before. So edit marker and build out optional. Okay, so if you just wanted this on with no animations, you just use this bit here. Now what am I going to do to bring it on? I'm actually going to adjust the opacity of the clone layer so it comes on like that. Okay, a few ways of doing it. You could do it with keyframes, or what you could do it with a ramp. And I'm just trying to think the best way, because really normally what I do is I tend to put a ramp, because then you get the lovely S-curve of the motion of the acceleration, the speed up and then the slow down. But this is more or less a straight fade in, isn't it? Although I could do it with keyframes, I'm going to use behaviors because I think they tend to work better. You've got a bit more control over it. So, okay, behavior, parameter, and you're going to look for, on there, what am I looking for? I'm looking for ramp, aren't I? Yes, ramp on there. Now this is obviously very long at the moment, so I'll just go where I like it on the timeline. Hear the birds singing outside. Hit O for out, and that'll be actually 29, won't it? On there. Okay, look at the ramp. Start value, end value is going to be 100, and apply to blending opacity. Now, yeah. And there we have the thing coming in. Okay, we want to do the same for the out. So go ramp in. And duplicate that. Ramp out. And then the ramp out we shall push down so it's after the push it down so it's after the build out. And it's a frame longer, isn't it? A couple of frames longer. It's always tricky trying to work out what's frames and when it starts at 0 and bits and pieces like that. Okay, so what we can do is we know that that's 10 in the middle, so that's going to be 69 as opposed to 70. I can leave it at 70 because it's faded out, can't I? Or even just make that another frame longer. Right, okay, that's a ramp out, so it actually starts at 100 and ends on 0. I'm doing the wrong one. Oh, always the same. You can swap these over like that. Let's do that. So that's a ramp in, a ramp out. Starts at 100 and goes to 0. But you can see we've got a hole there. Okay, so what I tend to do is, it's a bit of a cheat. Let's duplicate that again. Go ramp mid. Yep. And we'll just stretch that out there to there. And then on mid, put that in the middle. And pump that up to 100. You can actually rig all of these so you can actually control something ramping up to another value and back down again if you're with me on there. So that should go up, stays, and then go down. Goes up, and then down. Wonderful. Okay, we want to put speed in. So how do we speed this up if we want a quicker ramp? What we need to do is we need to do a bit of a rig, and we need to do the start and end offsets. So if we look at the ramp in and look at the end offset, if we bring that back in, you can see this line down here, how it's getting faster. So it's actually going to be 29, isn't it? So it's 0 to 29, which we could say 30, couldn't we? Maybe I'll move the mark in, the build in by 1 to make it 30. Would that be okay? So that's 30, and I call it 30, and then the out would be 40 to 70, which would be 30 frames on there. I always get confused because this starts at 1 and maybe it should start at 0. And that's what's throwing me on there. Okay, so that's 29. What I'm going to do is maybe move that. So let's just delete that marker and put it on 31. Add marker. Edit marker. And we're going to go build-in optional. Okay. Bring that down. Extend that out. And that will give me the full 30. Okay. So this end offset, I'm going to go add to rig, create new rig, slider, and we're going to call this speed. Now it's going to go 1 to 30, isn't it? So the range on maximum there is going to be 30. 1 to 30, yeah. And then this end ramp, so if it's the fastest, that's going to be minus. Let's have a look at the opacity. So it's the opacity of that layer, isn't it? Yeah. So at the moment we're right on the end. So if I go to the clone layer and go on opacity, I can actually say showing keyframe editor, and that should keep there while I'm doing it. Yeah, that's a really handy trick to know because you can actually see what's going on. So that's 0. Okay, so at 0 it would be 30. So at 30 it's 0. And then when it's 0 it should be 30. And you can see there's a cut. Not that you particularly want that because you've got the build-in, build-out that you can control. But now the speed, and you need to do a bit of a refresh on here, I found. It won't automatically update. So if you hit this button here, it fits the curves into the window and it gives you a good update. So we've got 21, so back up to 30, nothing happens here. Hit that button and it goes back up like that. Okay, so that's the speed on the in. Now we need the speed on the out. So let's go back to our behaviors and have a look. Now you would think, oh yeah, well that's easy. You know, it's obviously the end offset. It's not, it's the start offset because you're pushing the start of the fade back. So let's put the start offset, that is not easy to say, into the rig. Add to speed. And then we need to work out which one we want. So at 30 it's going to be 0, that's correct. And then at 0 it's going to be 30. I'll tap 30 in there. So those should be following each other. So now if I go down here, you can see this is the opacity ramp and that is actually following either one. So if I put it up to 30, it takes all the while to go up and down. And then if I go maybe something like 6 and a bit, it's a quick ramp on there. Okay, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to program that, I don't know, maybe something like 20. And then publish that, go to the project. Okay, we need to do a bit of organization. Build in and build out, those can stay there. Speed, I'm going to put that up there because that makes sense, but it's the animation. And I said 30, didn't I? So let's go 20. Just check that's going to go to 20. Yeah. Foreground color, background color, drop shadow. Yeah, and then hit save. I don't know why I do it twice. Back into Final Cut Pro 10. I'll drop a new instance on. Actually, one great trick here is if you see this, this is the old version and it hasn't got the speed or the build in or build out, but it has got anything that you put in there. You know, if you put any controls in, if you Alt drag, it makes a new copy with the new controls in, which is really handy. If you've got something that's complicated and you know, a load of tweaks, you can just drag a new copy and it'll update it automatically. So here we've got the fade and the fade out. Because we did the build in, build out markers, those fades will always stay that time because even if you stretch the thing out, it's the same duration on there. That's the joy of the build in and build out markers. And of course, we can also adjust this. Maybe what I might do is I might publish the text entry box into the graphic as well. But because it's a title, you have access to all of these controls, which is really handy when you want to do something like line spacing, or you might want to change the text on there. And let's just check everything else is working on here, which I'm pretty sure we did it before, didn't we? Yeah. Okay. So there's another plugin for you. You could use it as the basis to build something better. You could have the text animating on. You could use it as it is. You can put your corporate colors, local sporting colors in, whatever you want to do. And bear in mind with the motion project, because we have duplicated the clone layer and not the text layer, you could even drop in a logo into that layer. Maybe something like even publish a drop zone that you can control and push around. Maybe I'll do that for the version that you can download on there rather than build it here. But very flexible, and it also gives you an idea on how motion works. So there you go, Inside, what did I call it? Inside Text Shadow. That's a free plugin. You can download that on the Industrial Revolution site now. But thanks for watching. As we said, a like, a subscribe, and ringing the bell always helps. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.